Welcome back to the Dawn on JCC TV, where we command the morning and cause the dawn to know its place. And this is JCC TV, where we bring you the uncompromised gospel. We have had our morning glory service, we've had the watch. I hope that you have been blessed. And now we move into a discussion that is very, very interesting and that I personally want to know more about, and that is taxes taking effect in January 2023 in the Finance Bill of 2022 and 2023. Now, we are going to learn that and much, much more, all things tax. If you have any question, you can talk to us on our social media platforms at JCC TV, at Lucy Flora Mwendwa. And I have a guest in the studio who is going to help us understand more about that, and I will let him introduce himself. Karibu.
Thank you, Lucy, for having me. My name is Nzomo. I'm a partner in Francis Kiete and Associates. We're in charge of taxation. Today we're going to have a very good discussion about how to handle taxes, especially what comes in 2023. We will have as many questions to answer as possible. And we thank you for having me for today.
Karibu sana.
Okay.
So what are some of the taxes that are taking effect?
Now, the finance bill for 2022-2023 that was passed in June, because last year was a busy year for elections, brought in a budget of 3.3 trillion. Now, when the budget was sent to law, then two things happened, because the effect of tax took two stages. Number one, there were tax that was to be effective from 1st July 2022. The taxes that were to be effective from 1st January 2023. Now, because of how the government runs, the government must run through collection of taxes. Then in 2023, some of the things that the Finance Act 2022 brought in one of them was capital gain tax. There's a tax called excise duty tax and a digital tax services. Now let's break them down so that viewers can understand exactly what this means. Now initially, KRA used to charge capital gain tax at a rate of 5%. Capital gain tax is a tax levied on property and insurance securities, on property transfers. Now, initially, KRA used to tax 5%, but the Finance Bill 2022-2023 increased the rate to 15%. Simply because KRA is trying to help collect taxes from the common taxpayers, and this field has been not taxed for long. If you remember very well, the capital gain tax came effective from the year 2019. And from statistics that has been analyzed by especially Business Daily on the last 3 days, the rate of taxes collection has already increased. From 2019, the figure was about 5 billion. That was collected by capital gain tax. In 2020, the figure was about 4 billion. In 2021, the figure was 5 billion. And last year, the figure shoot up to 7 billion. Simply because at the end of the year, taxpayers who knew the effective of this tax, the rate, rushed to try to beat the deadline. So the tax consultants and accountants in December were very busy trying to close as many transactions for customers as possible. Now, looking at that, KRA realized that there's a gray area on land transfers. Then they increased the rate from 5% to 15%. Now, what the taxmen try to do, because as you know that we are in heavily debt, they are trying to expand the tax bracket to try to net in about 20 billion from property transfers. Now, by doing so, KRA will now fasten the connection of the property transfers and ensure that they try to beat the deadline. Now, coming in on that, the Finance Bill 2022-2023 expanded the rate and also gave exceptions on what kind of property can be taxed, or this 15%. The exemptions are: one, if you are transferring profit to your family member, there is no capital gain tax. That's one. So if you, Lucy, you have your land, and I am your relative, you're transferring to me as a family member, then KRA says, because it's one pocket to another pocket, there's no tax. The other thing that they also allowed is that when a shareholder, like I hold 100% shares in my company, I'm transferring the property to my company, then I don't pay tax, because it's the same guy I'm the same man who controls 100%. It is just changing hands from one end to another. The other area there KRA also looked and adjusted was the shares quoted in Nairobi Stock Exchange. If you're transacting in Nairobi Stock Exchange and your turnaround is about 5 billion from 1st January 2023, then there will be no capital tax gain. So they tried to create a balance on who to be taxed and who not to be taxed. And their target is to ensure that they net as much as possible on capital gain tax. Yeah.
A 10% increase,
yes,
at once.
Yes.
It's big.
You see, I think this is the lowest in East Africa comparative with the other East African community countries. However, if you look at the other option was, now the normal companies are paying taxes 30%. So even the 10%, 15%, and 30% is they try to look at the balance. Again, that's to show that KRA is still looking at taxing the wealth, as opposed to, because initially most of transactions are done, it's assumed that is with somebody called edging. They are trying to manage and ensure that they tax people who are transacting on land transfers. So the rate, yes, the increase on 30% was high, but see, when the Treasury passes the law, then KRA, what KRA is not to pass the law. Basically, the Treasury passes the budget, and then KRA now implements what has been passed by law. So, there is a confusion whether KRA passes the law or what happens. But the Treasury is in charge of budgets. Then KRA just implements what has been passed budget. There is nothing KRA will ever do without Treasury approving it. So they just implement what Treasury has passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've also seen the comeback of mobile transactions fee.
Yeah, the other, I think it's on 5th January. One of my clients called me and asked me, what is this I'm hearing about taxing my money, transferring from this account, what have I done to be taxed?
Yeah.
The thing is that KRA is not taxing the money per se. These taxing the charges that the bank is going to charge you for transacting. So now, effective from first, that's the other part of the other section of tax that was effective from 1st January 2023. That KRA now weighed in on transactions. You remember that during COVID, the president then allowed us to use mobile because of, there was no greeting, and there was COVID transfer on cash. So then they suspended the tax on transactions to ensure that we transact online. Now, effective this year, what the government has done is that they realize that, you see, eventually they are trying to also ensure that they net up their tax. So they increased the rate. The rate now is 20% on transactions, not on the money you're transferring, what the bank is charging you. So it will be, of course, the cost goes back to the consumer, because the bank also will always charge you. So, yes, it is a burden to us, but not as people may think. It's not on the transaction, it's on the transaction fee that the bank charges you.
But still, 20% is a lot.
But now, how much the bank charges? Maybe 10, if it's 20, it will be 20% of that charge that the bank charges you. Yeah, it's a little bit low, because again, you look at the current status, is like everybody is going to money transfers. So it will look like indirect tax, because even in my mother in the village who transact with M-Pesa is still paying that tax. because the owners to collect the tax is on the mobile provider, the service provider, the bank, Safaricom. So we may not have, public may not have a lot of information about this, but it's like indirect cost. The way we pick like VAT. VAT is an indirect cost, tax. That is tax on transactions. If you go and buy anything in the supermarket, you pay VAT. If your mother goes to the supermarket, he pays VAT. So that's way the indirect tax are implemented. So the onus to collect is not on you, is on the one who is providing service. So the banks and the mobile providers will now be able to account for the transaction that they are doing to the government in part of taxes.
I feel like it's double taxation, especially when it comes to people who are in business, because you are paying taxes as a business, and you are also paying taxes through transfer of money.
You see, there are several taxes that are levied in Kenya. One of them is corporate tax, where you pay tax at the end of the year after doing business. At the end of the year, you pay corporate tax at 30%. That's on profit.
Okay.
The profit you make, KRA says we share. You take 70%, KRA takes 6%.
Caesar.
Caesar takes what belongs to Caesar. And the VAT is value addition. It's not charged on the cost. It's what the value you add on the transaction. For instance, if today I buy a product that is 2 shillings and I sell at 5, the VAT will be on the 3 shillings, the additional. Okay. So it's value added. You tax on the value addition. Now, excess duty is charged on the service, that the platform that the banks use to transact. And it helps. You see, eventually, what KRA is doing, what the government does is that it has to run its budget.
Yeah.
Of course, last year, if you remember, the budget was about 3.3 trillion. Meaning, and what was allocated to tax collection was about 2.1 trillion. So for them to collect that, then they must expand the bracket of collecting tax. So this is one of the ways that KRA uses to collect tax on behalf of the government. Remember, the government runs on taxes. It does not do business. If they do the roads, they pay civil servants. They have a huge budget. They call recurring costs. So that is run through taxes. So you cannot run the government without taxing, because they don't do business. But they give you the platform to transact. They allow you to own land. So that by itself, then you need to pay. If you're transacting the land, you pay capital gain tax.
Okay. Now, do the citizens get value for their taxes? Because you still go to hospitals and there's no medicine.
One of the challenges that any government faces, from Kibaki to President Uhuru to now President Ruto, is that there has been a cry from taxpayers on how to manage their taxes. Remember that you only get the value of money when you see where the tax is going.
Sure.
So the government, my opinion is that the government need to come out and explain to to taxpayers, how are they using the money. They need to do too much publication on what they are doing, so that people can now accept and start paying, accepting that their money is going to the right pocket. Now, however, now because of so many scandals here and there, then definitely there will be that question: are we getting value for money? Yeah. So the government has to come out and give taxpayers too much explanation on what they are doing, so that people can now understand what is our man doing with the government. Because
as a taxpayer hearing that 2 billion shillings inapotea kila siku and there's nothing happening and someone can do about it, that's painful. It's painful, and that's why
if you look at it, after the President Ruto came in the government, he tried to do cost cutting. He is looking at the ways to reduce the burdens, because the question was initially was that how do we ensure that what we collect is used fairly and we don't get into debt. So they're still trying to put our systems to try to ensure that we become corrupt free. However, worldwide, there's still not country that has mature enough to be corrupt free. So we are saying they are trying to work out and to ensure that there is not much siphoning of taxpayers' money.
But when it comes to corruption, Kenya tuko juu kidogo.
Yeah, and growing economy. You see, we always say in African culture, there is no market that has no loose hands here and there. So a growing economy is prone to too many systems that are flawed. And remember that we are still a growing economy, and we are trying to come up to the expectation. And that means that we will have challenges on the way. And I believe that the current government is trying to address those challenges. And let us see, they are in for about the last 7 months. Yeah. Probably things will change after June.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Now
the other final thing that came in 2023 January was the taxation on digital platform. There was a new law that Kenya put in that, the digital tax came in a little bit higher, 2019 precisely. And the rate is 1.5% to tax on digital services. Now this tax was levied to only non-residents who are transacting in the digital market. Okay. Digital market is online market. Okay. So now this year, they brought in a 16% on the local residents who are doing digital market. But now the only place that they are still trying to work on is how do they do it? How do they implement this law? That's what they are trying to put in place to ensure that it's implemented. See, the law, when the law is in, then there must be a mechanism. Treasury has put mechanism to ensure that they implement the law. Yeah.
The digital services, which ones are they?
These are video watching, sporting, and anything that you do online. That's a digital market. Yeah. So if you are watching a movie today from a supplier who is in Nairobi, you pay for watching the movie. So he will charge you VAT and submit to the government. Not you, it's him to charge you. So what you pay plus VAT. You understand? So now the issue is now, how do you control that? Yeah. That's what I think Kenya has to work around, because most of the taxpayers they pay through mobile. So that platform, how do you link them and ensure that you collect the maximum tax? That's a bit that I think they need to see. They are trying to work around to ensure that they net tax from there. Definitely, it will be implemented, because if you look at like 90% of transactions now are done on mobile banking. Yeah. So unless they are able to collect tax from that end, they may be losing a lot of. There will be a loophole on there on a lot of taxes. Yeah.
Okay, minimum tax.
Yes.
We've also seen it's coming in.
No, minimum tax actually was introduced in 2021 by the government. What minimum tax was aimed to do was aimed to handle taxpayers or companies who are on perpetual losses. Perpetual loss is a company that makes loss continuously. They can make loss this year, next year. So KRA said, look, though the company may be paying VAT, they may be paying other taxes, but they don't pay corporate taxes. So they introduced a 1% tax, minimum tax on turnover. It was a debated tax implementation system that the same year, some of the aggrieved taxpayers, they went to court and asked for a court injunction. So minimum tax was suspended by High Court. So KRA was aggrieved and said, no, we need to collect taxes. In fact, this tax was supposed to be paid quarterly, like installment tax. on the 4th month, on the 6th month, on the 9th month, and on the 12th month. So once they went to court, then High Court suspended the tax. So now KRA went back to High Court to ask for clarity. So in January this year, it was also nullified. So minimum tax is not applicable now.
Okay.
Yeah. So the court said you can't apply this tax. It's not applicable because of equity. Yeah. Because the fact that we are having losses does not mean that it's not genuine loss. Again, KRA have a mechanism of trying to go through your books and find out, are you genuinely giving the right picture of your business or not? Yeah. So if they have that mechanism, the question was, why then are you saying that you want to do minimum tax, and yet you have the mechanism to go and find out from the customers, from the suppliers, who are your customers, so from the taxpayers, who are your customers, how they are running their businesses. Now, and unless you explore that area and we realize you're unable to do it, then the minimum tax can apply. So the court also nullified it. So the minimum tax is not applicable now. Okay. Yeah.
And we've seen, like every year, the taxman starts to tax something new.
Yes.
Is the goal just looking for money to run the government?
If you look at for the last 3 years, from the budget of 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, if you look at the budget, they have been increasing. From 2020, 2021, it was 2.4 trillion. It went up to 3.3 trillion last year. Probably this year we may look at 3.6 trillion. Now, what happened is that the expenditure of the government continue increasing because we are a growing economy. Remember that there is no country that grows without infrastructure, without increasing their productivity. So that means that for them to finance that, then they must look for ways of collecting taxes. So the increase is they try to broaden the tax base so that they collect the maximum tax they can do. Remember that in the last financial year, the previous government was able to surpass the budget. So, and that means that probably now, what happened after that is if you look at the budget, they increased the budget rate by a big margin. So, all the expense of the government must be run through taxation. So, to collect that, that's why you see them introducing new taxes every year. And you see more. Probably there's a tax that you're going to charge on gaming, gambling and gaming. They are going to come in and when they were launching the budget for this year, they said the PS Treasury said that they were trying to trace on how to tax gaming. So that will come in. So definitely they will try to broaden the tax base. Yes.
We are seeing an increase in the cost of living. And for example, someone who is working, their salary is not increasing. But the cost of living is increasing, and there is this taxes which keep being increased. Is the taxpayer, is the burden with the taxpayer?
You know, the state of the cost of the purchase power of Kenyans and of the world has drifted very high because of COVID. Remember, they had COVID, and we had the war in Ukraine, and not here globally. In fact, the Treasury CS was alluding that we may have a very tough year in 2023 because there is maybe an economic crunch that's coming in due to those two factors. So now the cost of living will definitely not be easy this year because if you look at every product that we consume, every good that we consume must have power. Power must be involved. Fuel must be involved. So those two items are they control like 100% of the market of what we do. Now, if fuel has to go up, food has to go up, because there's no production that will never happen without oil. That means that even KPLC will go up because they can't produce enough electricity using geothermal and hydro. So they also use oil. So that combined together means that we will have to be able to, we have to adjust and try to manage within our means. Now, the salary increase, you see, each company has its own policies of operating. So now, because of the, if you look at from the COVID period, there was adverse effect on businesses. So you will realize now it's the business that try to recover from COVID. So even some of the salaries went down during those times, and even some of the staff have not been, companies are not adjusting the salaries today. So that by itself and the increase in cost of food, then you will always have very low purchasing power for customers. Yeah.
So tujikaze.
We have to put our foot down and work harder.
Wow.
Or we try to do side hustles.
Which are still going to be taxed.
Of course.
You guys.
Of course, that's income generating.
Wow. So it's like KRA ni kama yenyewe literal Caesar.
No, you see, when we look at KRA as quote unquote the big elephant in the house, what about us looking at KRA helping the government to collect tax and run the government entities, hospitals, schools? There are subsidies. Of course, the current government removed them. So if you look at schools, hospitals, all amenities, roads, all that the government has to do. So what I think the taxpayer need to be informed about is to be educated on why government collected taxes. Yeah, it's not so that it doesn't look punitive. You help the government to run. Okay. Yeah.
I would like us to look at the tax collection performance and in tax collection gap and impact.
The finance bill 2022-2023 that was effected in June was aimed at increased tax from 2.4 to 3.3 trillion. Now, remember that was an election here. Ups and downs on what may happen on collection. Now, statistics that I've done for the last, I think, 5 months shown that KRA has not been able to achieve its target. And more so, that has been caused by, they're talking about corporate tax, according to the Business Daily. The figure is about 30 billion. That is the shortfall that KRA has. Now, that may continue simply because now we are in a new year and the taxes are not changed. And if you look at the economic performance, it's not that fast growing. So we expect probably KRA not to achieve the target this year, maybe next year. Now, if you look at how the government has tried to manage that, is previous government has proposed the new taxes that are beginning in January. So if it goes by what they had planned to do, they may collect a little bit higher than what they did the previous 5 months. Because the new taxes now, like we talked about capital gain tax, has increased the rate from 5 to 15%. That means that's about 20 billion shillings. There's also what they have called TIMS, Tax Invoice Management System. Now, the last year but one budget, KRA brought in a new system of curbing loopholes on VAT collection. And that was to become effective from June last year. But by then, the gadgets that were required to manage that system, because that system will be an online system where KRA would now be accessing your data online. That is, there are new ETRs that are brought in. Once you punch in that ETR, that data goes direct to KRA, to you and to your customer, as long as you put the PIN of the customer there. So that by itself will ensure that they weed in the what they call missing. They used to call them missing traders. Missing traders was a name given to, you know, Kenyans also have a way of managing their issues. Yeah. So they used to, there's a team of people and taxpayers who used to raise invoices from backdoor, and they try to claim VAT. So there was a lot of issues that was raised by KRA from year 2017 on VAA. VAA is a value-added automated system that KRA system picks the invoice and matches them with the supplier to see whether what you've disclosed is what I've disclosed. So there was a lot of outcry because KRA picked too many things and sent to customers, to taxpayers to explain why this invoice, I've given you invoice A and I'm not showing it. Yeah. Okay? So to manage that, KRA went back and said, okay, the best solution is to have a system that once I invoice you, it goes to your iTax system, and the other system goes directly to the taxpayer. So that system was implemented from June this year, and the deadline of every taxpayer who has a VAT obligation going to the system was the end of November, 30th November 2022. So now that means that from January, probably, we will not have any inconsistency. Okay? So KRA now will be able to collect maximum tax using that system because they will be self-reconciling. They will have all your data. They will have your data, what you purchased to, who you purchased from, and they will have that populated in your system. The other advantage is that once that's done, then filing return for VAT becomes easier because what you need to do is the system is auto-populated. You just click, it tells you that you supply this guy, you are supplied by this guy. The net effect is here. As opposed to initially, when you used to feed the data in the system, and then sometimes you put customer without PIN, and you claim anonymous claims in VAT. So that by weeding that, the tax, there will be an increase on collection on VAT, and eventually that means that our corporate tax will also increase as well. Yeah.
Wow. And as a good citizen and a good law-abiding citizen, we have to voluntarily disclose our taxes. Help us understand the voluntary tax disclosure program.
Now, the voluntary tax disclosure program was a program by KRA to try and expand tax collection and allow taxpayers who willingly would like to pay their taxes, which they have never paid. In fact, they are saying, you cheated us for long. Now we allowed you to, we give you an amnesty. It's like an amnesty. You disclose the money that you never disclosed for the last 5 years. And then we will allow you not to be penalized and interest. Now this system was brought in 2019 by the previous government. Their aim was to try to bring in that kind of money that I've said, so that they try to bring as many taxpayers in the market. Now that voluntary tax system had 3 phases. The first year was that you were to be allowed to be allowed not to be taxed penalty and interest at 100%. That was 2020. In 2021, they will now bring it down to 50%. So if you disclose your liability that you had not disclosed in the first year, KRA tells you don't pay interest, don't pay penalty. So you only pay the tax. but there was a process that you had to apply so that you are granted that. The second year, you are supposed to pay, you are allowed 50% of that tax. So don't pay 50% of the tax. The final year, that is 2023, now they brought it down 25%. So you are given right, please come. Tell us how much money you have not disclosed. Disclose it. Pay taxes. By doing that, KRA have managed to collect some money the first year, because of one of the things that they say is that they don't want to ask you where the money came from. They don't go to put you in court unless you are under investigation. So there was an amnesty of money under the mattress. You bring it in, then no questions, unless you are under investigation. So the first year, KRA collected 14 billion. First year.
Wow.
2021, they took, collected 14 billion. In 2022, they collected 9 billion.
It went down. It
went down because see now you are allowed 50%. So the 100% is 14 billion. 50% is 9 billion. So we can even say today, probably it will be 4 billion because it went half by half. It may be 4 billion. So that tax allowed taxpayers to come. Remember, this is not the first time that this is happening. I think 2004 when Kibaki was there, they also gave an amnesty. And remember that those days when that government, we had a finance minister who was called David Mwiraria. He's the only man who managed our budget without borrowing. So at that time, amnesty people paid. There was a goodwill from the government. And taxpayers came, and they disclosed everything. Now, this time around, I think taxpayers are not sure what to do, so they're still going slow. So this time around, probably we will have 4 billion of tax to be disclosed.
And has the taxpayer lost trust with KRA and the government?
The same question that you asked earlier about the value for money. That is that's I can say is the reason why we have low uptake on the voluntary tax, because every time when you hear your child in school has failed and he repeats he fails again, you will not have trust on the school. Probably you look for another school where the child can get better education. So taxpayers are not happy when they hear one scandal on that corner, there's a scandal on that corner, there's another scandal here. And they are saying, we are paying taxes, but it looks like it's not purely used for what is supposed to be used. So taxpayers, they have not that confidence that they used to have during Kibaki time when they did too much disclosure than now. However, some of the taxpayers have taken advantage of this, and that's why we are talking about the collection of 14 billion and 9 billion. So yes, there is a feeling that our taxes are not used well, but you saw the other bit that people are saying, okay, let's support our government. Probably it will be a good, like this government, probably it has a very good goodwill, and they may, if they don't, because if they manage the treasury well and they tell taxpayers what is happening with their collection, then the goodwill, goodwill, you build it. It's not a one-stop shop. You must build it and make it better every day. So maybe next year they can give another voluntary tax disclosure, and people may come in and disclose to women tax.
I would like to bring in the filing of taxes. Why is it important?
KRA, the government has given us a platform to self-assess. Filing taxes is a self-assessment you do. They ask, the question is, for the last 1 year, what have you been doing? So that they try to see whether what you are doing is true or false. So they allow you to file the return. You tell them, you take care that the last 1 year I'll be trading. This is the amount of money I've collected. And you submit personal assessment. KRA does not force you to submit. However, there is a law that you must do it as long as you have a PIN number. Now that PIN number allows you to log into iTax and file your personal assessment return. It is not KRA filing you. It is you filing your assessment return. If KRA looks and suspects that you are not truthful, or they, or nowadays there's an intelligence system in KRA. It can pick variations. For example, if you have VAT obligation and your return sales does not match with VAT obligation to be picked. So the filing return helps KRA to know how much you transacted last year. And purely they try to manage and see whether what you have disclosed is exactly what you did. If they feel that, of course, you had issues here and there, they will definitely come to assess. They just say, we want to see what you have. And they want to see whether what you have is what you disclosed. Now, if you have under disclosed, now you get into audit, what they call audit, and then they will assess you accordingly. But initially, you do a self-assessment return. You declare, I, Mr. Nzomo, did business, and this is what I collected, and this is tax I paid. Okay? Now, that's your self-assessment. That's why when they come, they tell you, they ask you, you assess to yourself this much. Now, how much? Show us what books you kept to support what you assessed yourself. Yeah. So that's a way of trying to ensure that you are truthful and you comply with the law, because the law demands us to file returns every year. Individuals, the calendar year is December. You must file your return before June. Failure to which you pay a penalty of 2,000. Companies, they are given 6 months from the year end. They are coming that year end is January. The others, it's not like an individual. Individual has on 1 year end, calendar year. But companies can choose different years of year ends. But from that year end, you have 6 months to file your return. To disclose to KRA, I've been trading. This is what I've traded. Then if you don't do that, then there is a late penalty for submission of 20,000 shillings for company and 2,000 for individuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like us to go back again to taxing of wealth. And during the inaugural speech, the president talked about overtaxing trade and undertaxing wealth. And I would like to ask, what measure, in your opinion, has Treasury put in place on the wealth in wealth tax?
The government weighs in on there's something they call sin tax. This tax that it taxed on areas where you go and enjoy yourself, like
Sin tax.
Sin tax.
Like that.
Yeah. Like when you go to play in a casino.
Okay.
When you go and the people go and take alcohol there and here and there, the cigarettes. So those taxes are taxed because, in a way, to ensure that you reduce the exposure of citizens on that, there's always a higher tax on those areas. But the government has moved on very fast to one thing that I've realized of late on their presentation that they did on, I think on Wednesday, when they are launching the finance plan for 2023-2024, they talked about taxing casino, the gambling. Okay. Now that's because you can't play gambling unless you are wealth. Yeah. Although there are some gambles you can do, the low class. But for example, a casino. When you go to play in casino, you are you must be able to run around, and of course, it is quote unquote associated with the wealth. Yeah, and so KRA is weighing on that and trying to, they have a system that they are tested so far, which links the betting and KRA. So these betting companies will be paying taxes daily, both on betting company and the winner. So the winner will be paying withholding tax, and the company will be paying tax as well. So they are trying to curb in on that, so that if you win a lottery today, you pay withholding tax. As opposed to previously, where there was no law that could govern. You go to Sport Pesa, you make your money.
So those people who are winning those millions, there was no tax?
Initially, some time back. But last year and this year, the government weighed in. And now they are saying if you go to a lottery and win, then you pay withholding tax. I think it's 20%. And also you pay, the company also pays tax. So that's one of the areas where they have weighed in to try to get, because that is, as I said, associated wealth. Another part they have gone into details is on the capital gain tax, where you are transacting on land. We have spoken that earlier. That they are saying that for any transaction you do, you pay 15%. And that is not easy, because you are transferring, you are selling your property that you purchased maybe 15 years ago at a cost of 1 million. Now you're selling at 100 million. So they are saying, you look at the costing, that all the costs you used to improve that land and fencing and everything, and the legal fee, accountant's fee, the difference, they want to get in and take 15%. We will see it more on also on monthly rental income. That's another tax that came in previous budgets.
Before we go to the MRI,
yes,
is there tax on idle land?
No,
Okay.
there's no tax on idle land. What is there is the normal rates, land rates. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So enlighten us more about the monthly rental.
I think 3 years, if I'm not right, I'm wrong, it's about 3 years ago. KRA, no, not even 3 years ago. It's about 5 years ago. KRA weighed in on landlords, and they did a mapping with the KPLC. According to source on KRA, when you have more than about 3 meters, you know the meter KRA, the KPLC meter. If your name appears there, and you took your meter and you have 5 meters, they know that you cannot have 5 houses. You can only stay in one house here and one in the village, or 2. Yeah. So they say for this one, because see the meters will be mapped on the area localities. For example, you have 5 meters in Baburi. They will call you for a discussion. Okay, come. We want to. So they used the data in KPLC. That's why you realize that for you to have a meter in KPLC, you must have a PIN number. So government shares information. Okay, that sharing of information now exposes the tax evaders. And KRA now, after getting that information, they map it up together. And they now started conducting people who have a lot of meters. If you have, there are people who have 200 meters, maybe 50 meters. Yeah, there are guys who have too many meters. And you know, then they could not, it was not exposure so. It was like you have a house, a Kiswahili house, so you have meters. You may have 10 rooms, you may have 15 rooms, and you want, you know, each one wants his own meter. And because you probably, of lack of knowledge, all meters are in your name. Okay? So KRA went into KPLC. They picked all people who have many meters. One of my friends, I think he had about 42 meters. Okay? So they picked them. Now what they did is that they called you for discussion. Come and tell us this 50 meters. How many houses do you have? So by doing so now, people started volunteering information, and they started coming in to disclose their tax monthly rental income. The rate is 10%. They have a minimum of, you must be collecting 288,000 shillings per year to pay MRI. And you can't go, if you have more than 15 million in a year, then you need to pay corporate tax. Remember, MRI is only 10%. Corporate tax is 30%. So KRA is saying the window you can operate between 288 and 15 million. There you can pay MRI, monthly rent or income. When you go beyond that, then you need to start paying corporate tax. So that system, I see it trying to be revamped this time around. If the last year KRA was walking around houses asking who is this house, they take the local number, they call you, try to map all the houses, because that's one of the gray areas where KRA wants to get in and collect as much tax as possible. Probably we may see either they may review the rate, I'm not sure, because I've not heard them say, I've not read anywhere, but they may review the rate possibly to ensure that they collect as much tax as possible. Yeah. Yeah.
What tax deductions are available for individuals and businesses?
Oh, that's a new topic. No, you see, if you're employed, for instance, you pay as you earn, you have a relief. During COVID, the minimum tax bracket was moved to 24,000 shillings. So if you're earning less than 24,000 shillings, you don't pay taxes. Okay. So that's the relief, 2,400 to 24,000 shillings. Anything below that's the relief you have. But for companies, all expenses, the law says wholly and exclusively used for business venture are allowed for tax purposes. Any expense that is personal, any expense that does not concern the business, then it is allowed. So that's a huge area where that can be covered in maybe another section. But the incentives that KRA gives businessmen there are several of them. There is investment deductions. There is a capital allowance that comes in depending on the section that you're operating. You know, the business we may have agriculture, we may have normal business, we may have the level of business differ, and the incentives are packaged depending on the kind of business that you do. Yes. Yeah.
And as we wind up, what does the KRA revenue targets mean in direct terms with fulfilling of the government promises?
Each budget that is prepared by the government is financed by 3 areas. 1, tax collection. 2, domestic borrowing. And 3, foreign borrowing. Now, each and every government will wish to finance its own budget using tax collection. But as a growing economy, and due to the investment in infrastructure that was done by the previous government, you realize that because of the commitments of the government, it's not possible for us to finance our budget using tax collection. So what happens is that collection is pegged on a budget, and KRA will be given a budget to collect. Like last year, I think it was 2.1 trillion to collect the financial year ending this 2023. They need to collect that. Now, if they don't collect that, it means that the government must do borrowing, or they try to make sure that they don't overspend so that they don't go into budget deficits. So failure to meet targets means that the government has higher deficit to meet its revenue expenditure targets. So they may either have to do internal borrowing or they have to do external borrowing so that to mitigate that variation that may be caused by a deficit in tax collection. Yes.
In your experience, what are some of the areas that Kenyans and businesses are ignorant about that may land them on the wrong side with KRA or the law or the auditors?
I think the packaging of KRA initially was like hitman. Initially, you used to hear KRAs coming to your office, you close and run away. Because they used to be coming with a lot of force. But for the last, I think, 4 years, the government had tried to make a user-friendly KRA, where they will have a discussion with them, and then you will be able to receive information from them, and they will help you to run the system. Now, currently, the new administration, I said, they want to change even the name of KRA to be Kenya Revenue Services. What they are trying to do is to ensure that KRA becomes service to us, taxpayers, so that they explain to us the areas where we have made mistakes. Remember that people may make mistakes without knowing, because they lack knowledge on the taxes that have to be paid. And if today I find you have not done one or two things concerning the law, I think KRA should be able to educate us on areas where taxpayers, because most taxpayers don't know tax. Yeah, when they hear a call from KRA, they don't sleep. There is a letter. They may have pressure because of the thought and the belief that KRA is like a policeman as opposed to service. So once that is brought into the taxpayers, then they will be able to understand that this is a service to us. They're supposed to ask. It's called taxpayer service. Tax is going to be changed to not Kenya Revenue Authority. The Prince said they want to call it Kenya Revenue Service. So now the name changes, and I believe that the attitude and the approach will also change.
From authority to service.
Yes.
And we've seen, especially during the electioneering period, when we had some of the candidates being alleged that they had not filed their taxes, or issues of tax evasion. Is KRA up to tabs with everyone when it comes to paying of taxes?
You see, KRA has all the data for everyone. If they want to see what I'm doing now, they can just get there and they will know how much I paid. But the question is, do they have the capacity to investigate and check everything? I would say not really. Simply because taxpayers are many, and the people who are employing KRA cannot be able to handle everything. However, there are red flags that KRA works on. The red flags helps KRA to go and investigate areas where they perceive that there is a tax cheat. Now, if you have a tax cheat, then what happens is that they will come, check your premises or check what you are doing, and investigate. And if they find you have an issue on KRA, then they will penalize you for that. Now, there are a mechanism that the government, the Treasury, have put in. If I'm aggrieved by KRA, there are stages that I can go to ensure that we mitigate and close the case well. If it goes up to High Court. If KRA is, if for example, there's a case between a taxpayer and a KRA, they was exhaust the KRA mechanism. It's called Tax Tribunal Authority. Tax Tribunal, yeah. They will explore that. They will go to High Court and becomes a case until they can go to the High Court to try to solve the issue. So that by itself means that if somebody is aggrieved, if somebody has a tax issue and he can't resolve within KRA, there are other mechanisms that KRA has set in place. In fact, there is one that's called ADR, or Alternative Tax Resolution, where KRA has accepted that we sit together and let's agree on the best way forward on the case. So KRA has put in so many mechanisms because they even themselves don't want to go to court because they know it's a long process. So there's a system that they are putting in place to ensure that those cases that were mentioned during, we have talked about the election period, they have a mechanism that KRA can solve them, other than becoming too punitive to them. Yeah.
Wow. And as we wind up, the church and paying taxes.
Yes.
Help us understand. Maybe someone amepata wito, ameenda kufungua kanisa mahali.
Yes. That's a big topic to discuss. But what I can say on that is that a church is registered, is classified by income tax as a non-profit making. And there was a case that KRA went and raided Thika Baptist Church. Is in public domain, so I can talk about it. And they wanted that church to pay taxes. And the church, they went to court. And there was a ruling. I will share with you after the show. They were ruling that, or the fact that you are classified as a non-profit making, that you don't need to pay corporate tax. However, there are taxes that you need to pay. One, if you have staff, you need to pay. You must have a PIN number first and foremost. You must file returns, whether you are trading or not trading, because that is a law. So long as you have a PIN number, you must file returns. Even if you are, whether you are a church or an NGO, you must pay return. So there are other taxes that are inside employment tax. For example, pay as you earn. If you have staff, you must pay as you earn on time. If you don't pay as you earn, KRA will come for it. That even if you are a non-profit making, because you are paying salary to a citizen of Kenya, who is supposed to contribute to the tax. Number two, if you are handling professionals, like accountants, lawyers, architects, there's something they call withholding tax. You are expected by KRA to withhold tax and pay them, because that is not your money. I bill you 1 million. As a professional, my withholding tax is 5%. You deduct, you pay KRA. So if you don't do that, they'll come knocking. Not for corporate tax, because you are classified as a non-profit making. But they'll come for other taxes. I've said pay as you earn, professional fee. And then you must also do your audit and file the return at the end of financial year, 6 months after the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we see 2023 looking?
Of course, we are optimistic. We have faith. We have faith. We are Christians, born again Christians. So we must have faith that next year will be better, the year of grace. So you cannot prophesy doom when Papa has prophesied grace.
True.
So it will be a year of grace. I believe that this will be a better year than last year. Though I have had treasury, they have said this will be a hard year. But I believe that there's more to do this year than last year. Yes, there will be challenges here and there, but I believe that there will be a way out, and we will achieve the best this year than last year.
Amen.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.
We are going for a very, very short break. I hope that you've learned something. Please file taxes. File your returns and be a good citizen. Let's help as the body of Christ and as citizens. The country, the running of the country depends on us. Even as we pray for the country, let us also do what we are supposed to do. Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We are going for a very short break. Continue talking to us on our social media platforms at Lucy Flora Mwendwa, JCC TV. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.